Welcome back to Scott Asmar, the man and everything in between. I am excited for this podcast because I have two special guests, lifelong friends, acquaintances, and that we kind of reconnected at a mutual friend's wedding back in May. And they were so interesting to talk to about their Christian faith and what they do. They're architects, and I'd like to introduce today's guests, Paul and Mark Halajian.
Hey, Scott. How are you? Scott, good to see
you. Hey, guys. So thankful for you having accept my invitation to be on the podcast. So great to have you. And let's just jump right in. So I want to talk to Paul a minute. Paul, tell me about what you do, your architecture and the designs, and just give me a little bit of background about who you are.
Okay, well, I've been practicing architecture for, I think, close to 40 years. I knew I wanted to be an architect very early. I think I was in like the 5th or 6th grade when I decided what I wanted to do. I credit my dad for kind of introducing me to architecture, what architecture is. And, it's funny that I've been, as I said, I've been doing it for like close to 40 years, and I still love what I do, which I think is kind of rare in the world today. I think what attracted me to architecture was just this whole idea that from a human perspective, it's one of the only truly lasting things. What we build, what mankind has built throughout the ages, different civilizations, and the things that remain are in some ways like artifacts that record what people were thinking at a particular point in history. So I don't know that I had figured all that out in the 5th grade, but just the idea that it's lasting, that it's big, it's important. I think those are the ideas that first captured my imagination. And as I studied it in college and in graduate school, I just became enamored and just fell in love with architecture and what it does for people, for life. And as I said, I've been doing it a long time, and I still love what I do.
Where did you go to school? What was your education background?
So I studied, I consider it a blessing. I studied architecture at UC Berkeley in the early and mid 80s. Interesting time in American architecture. It was a great time to be at Berkeley. When I was at Berkeley, it was and still is considered one of the top architecture schools in the country. One of the unique things about the way architecture is taught at Berkeley, it's a very kind of humanist approach where they bring in many other disciplines, psychology, geography, history. They really teach you the art of architecture. They teach you to think about the human, the human condition. A lot of other schools teach you the techniques of architecture, the science of it, the engineering of it. And I was fortunate before I started at Berkeley, I had worked quite a bit throughout high school. And so when I got to Berkeley, I had a pretty strong technical background. And what I missed was the art of architecture. And I got that in spades at Berkeley. And then I went on to graduate school. And in graduate school, that's kind of where I figured out a way to kind of bring my faith and my profession together. I was asked by my former youth pastor to design a church when I got out of graduate school, and I decided, why don't I take that on as my thesis project? So he was leading a Presbyterian church. I spent a semester researching what is unique about Presbyterianism. I looked at the kind of scriptural underpinnings of what was unique to the Presbyterian kind of doctrines. And the idea was to design a church that was inspired by scripture. And so that kind of started this lifelong love for church architecture. So we do a lot of churches, and we like to infuse the architecture of the church with scripture, with what is unique about a particular congregation.
I that is amazing. I love that. That is absolutely Like I have never like heard that before, meshing the two. And that's exactly what I want to get into a little bit more with you. I want to talk to Mark. Mark, how did you follow in your dad's footsteps?
Yeah, so I came about architecture kind of a roundabout way. It was really by the time I had graduated high school and gotten into orientation for my freshman year of college, I really decided that I didn't want to do I couldn't major in anything. Like I couldn't think of something outside of architecture to do, which was funny because all throughout high school I was very intent on, no, I'm not going to do architecture. I'm going to do something totally different. And then by the time I got to college, I was like, well, nothing else particularly is like speaking to me or something I want to do. So I might as well just dive into architecture. So yeah, from there I got my undergrad from Cal Baptist during COVID, and then went off to CU Denver for a master's degree of architecture, and then stayed an extra year for a master's of urban design.
Wow. So where did you go after you were Clovis North?
Clovis North, yes. Then to Cal Baptist.
What year did you graduate Clovis North?
2017. I graduated in 2017.
So you were with Alexander,
I was
right?
with
My son. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
I had, yeah, that misfired on me. You were with Alexander. Yeah. Well, you guys are always like so, like in the sports, and you guys were a force. You and your brother. I remember that. Yeah.
But that is how I ended up at Cal Baptist. Actually, I went there to wrestle, but they just so happened to have an architecture program, so it was a good fit at the time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, add something. As I have three boys, as they were growing up, I always thought if any of the three ever pursued architecture, it'd be Mark. And it was because he has a kind of wacky sense of humor. And I thought you have to be kind of wacky to be a good architect. And so.
Well, here he is. He's with you. So tell me, let's circle back to the architecture and the faith, because I know your family, along with your wife Carolyn, your three boys, you're very much rooted in Christianity and your faith. And how has that influenced your architecture? Influenced Mark? How has that influenced you? With your studies?
Yeah, it's a good question. So luckily at Cal Baptist, they do also kind of approach architecture from that humanist perspective, as Paul was mentioning, but more so from, a Christ-centered approach to what the human condition is. So knowing that we're imperfect beings, and how can we use our architecture to kind of improve the human experience. Also, forget the book, but I remember one of our readings at Cal Baptist was this book, and the main argument of the book was how when Christ comes back, he won't wipe away the world at the beginning of the end times, but he will come back to perfect it. So being able to contribute to that now, to see what our designs, how they'll be perfected, is something that also kind of speaks to me and motivates me to continue on my work.
That's amazing. I love that. I hadn't, you're giving us a view through different eyes, and I love that. And Paul, with your faith,
for me, it's always been this idea that, when you make something, when you envision something in your mind and you put together drawings that explain what's in your mind to communicate to somebody else who knows nothing about what's in your mind, how to build what you envisioned. It's long, arduous. It's filled with ups and downs, mistakes. And it just shows me how when imperfect beings try to create, we struggle. And I compare that to what God did. He spoke an entire universe into existence, and it happened. He didn't fashion it. He didn't get people to join his cause to create a universe. He just spoke it, and it happened. And so it's just a constant reminder of how big and how great God is, and how flawed we are. And it's just inspiring to know that God loves me. And even if my building leaks, he'll love me.
I love that, because that's exactly it, because we are all sinners, right? And we all fall. But the point is, we get up and and we move forward because he allows us to get up and come to him. Like a building would leak, like you said, we'll just go fix it, repair it.
That's never happened.
I'm sure it hasn't. So tell me, what has been one of your challenges in terms of architecture? Like, what building was a challenge to you that you had to overcome?
Oh gosh, everyone is. I don't know that I've ever. We sort of joke around here at the office. We tend to do kind of complicated buildings. It's kind of our forte. Things that are complicated. We don't do simple cookie cutter buildings, and every building is a challenge. And I think to do anything well, it's going to be a challenge. And so just to give you an example, we're working on a project right now in Oakhurst. It's a new campus for State Center Community College District. It's their new Oakhurst site. It's a gorgeous site up on a little plateau above the community of Oakhurst, surrounded by nature. We've been working on that since 2018, and we'll be done at the end of this year. So it's
2018.
2018. Sometimes these projects get really complicated, and it's not just architectural matters. Oftentimes it's legal matters or jurisdictional matters. Just untangling things like that. It's part of what we do. It's part of the problem solving. It's part of what makes it interesting. It's difficult, but it really keeps what we do exciting and making me want to get out of bed every day.
And Mark, tell me what you're doing with your dad. Are you working in your own projects? Are you with him on this project?
Not so much that project. I mean, I've done a little construction documentation work, but I'd say right now my role when I'm not on projects that I'm helping with in the design is mainly working with other project managers around the office to make sure that any work that that might be missed while they're managing the project, I can go in and fill in the gaps for them. So I like to think of when I'm not designing, I'm kind of like a pinch hitter for PMs.
One of the great things about Mark was he jokingly calls himself, what is our longest standing intern?
The longest standing.
So from college all the way through graduate school, he would intern in the office when he was home. So I think what happened was he would be here for short periods of time, and I would have a project or a design issue that I was struggling with, and I'd say, Mark, you work on this. So he became kind of this SWAT team guy where he'd come in and he would design something and then go back to school. And one project we're working on right now is a really interesting loft for a client. And Mark has been on that from the very beginning. And he has, he's put a lot of design effort into that. The client is just thrilled with his work and we're anxious to see it built. But so I think he's done a lot of really great design work, and he's now kind of moving more into the technical aspects of practice.
Which leads me to the question of AI. How has AI, has it influenced architecture? Has it helped? Has it been a detriment? Tell me about that.
I'll give you my thoughts, but you go first.
I mean, you definitely see AI, like if you're needing to analyze the code, the code's thousands of pages long and be very convoluted. So asking a specific question to AI, it can generate an answer like, this is where it will answer your question. You can have it, tell you where in the code you'll find it. It is interesting because, at this point, a lot of young people are very concerned about AI. We haven't really seen it influence design as much, mostly because, what AI is, it's not really able to generate anything new. It is just kind of able to pull in large amounts of data that the human mind couldn't all at once and then generate something from that, but it's not generating anything new. And I think
very true.
Yeah. So I think, in terms of design, I know a lot of architects are very, very high on the idea that AI will take over design. I think it would only work if we, as humans or as a culture decide that, this idea of creating new things or creating new designs, the novelty or the uniqueness of that isn't, greater than the utility of just being able to copy paste over and over again and just have AI spit out, designs that are compliant with various zoning codes and building codes, but it is essentially just an amalgamation of whatever input you give it.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. How about Paul? How have you seen the changes since you started and since your son has come in and incorporate with AI? Tell me, what are the changes that you've
So
seen?
when I started working, actually, I started in high school. In my high school, they were teaching a vocational architecture class. So in high school, I got my first job my senior year in a company, and someone paid me to draw. So I have been drawing. People have been paying me to draw since I was a senior in high school, and I have
Wow.
worked consistently ever since. So I've seen quite a bit of it. And when I started, everything was drawn by hand. So I've gone
Yes.
from that world to the next big, I guess, intersection with technology was when the computer entered the architectural office and we started using the computer to draw, to draft. And you've heard the term CAD. So
Yes.
CAD was essentially a two-dimensional, or it was a digital pencil, if you will, to create
Okay.
two-dimensional drawings. The next big advent in technology was we moved from CAD to BIM. BIM is Building Information Modeling, and Mark is very skilled with BIM. It's
Okay.
essentially what we do is instead of using the mouse to draw two lines that the computer understands as two lines, it actually inputs three-dimensional objects. So a wall is not just two lines on paper. The computer understands it as a wall that is 6 inches thick and 8 feet high, and it has a door and a window, and it understands the entire building in its three-dimensional reality. And these, what are called parametric programs, allow us to modify, add things, materials, etc. So it's gone from drawing by hand to two-dimensional drafting with a computer to modeling digitally. The next
Wow.
advent is integrating virtual reality in that. As one who's seen the whole gamut, I, I believe strongly that there is a different process from a thought going from your brain to your hand to a pen or pencil on paper. That's completely different than the process, that's used going to a mouse. I don't know that buildings have gotten any better. In fact, I'm quite certain they haven't gotten better. I don't
Right.
think it saved us huge amounts of time. It's simply a different paradigm.
Very interesting.
We can visualize things faster. We can do more iterations of a design quicker. I think we can communicate better with
Mhm.
clients, but I don't know that we're making better buildings. The experience of design is different, the process is different, but I don't know that the end result is any better.
Any better? I can understand that. So where does the fountain pens come into play?
Well, I guess it goes back to drawing. I was introduced to fountain pens by a professor of mine at Berkeley who used, I think he used this pen right here, the one I'm holding,
Okay.
and there was something about the way he would communicate an idea, the quality of the sketches he did with a fountain pen that was so fascinating to me. And so I started using cheap fountain pens, and I find sometimes cheaper ones are the best ones. And so I started using fountain pens to sketch, and I've just used them ever since. And I began to buy nicer and nicer pens. And at some point, the bug bit Mark.
Okay. So Mark, you got to tell us what's going on.
Oh yeah, I mean that is true. I did pick up the hobby of pens from my father, but I think a lot of it also came from going through high school using like a big roller ball and a number two pencil all the time. And you really never take much pride in the stuff you're doing because if you break your pencil or your pen, you just can pull out a new one. It's the same plastic or wooden thing that you've had for the past 13 years or whatever. So then when I started buying fountain pens, I realized like not only are they much nicer to look at, but there's just something about using them. It's like it's permanent. I'm gonna continue to use these pens for a long time. They don't feel replaceable. And I think that kind of added a sense of pride to my work where some ownership that I wouldn't have if I was using a replaceable just junk.
There's something old about it. You compare a fountain pen to a, computer software. There's something old and traditional and timeless about a fountain pen that you just don't have in the contemporary world. And it's just, to me, it's a great way to kind of ground yourself that there's some things that just don't change.
And I appreciate that. Absolutely. There's some things that just don't change. Yeah. So are you starting your own pen line? Or?
That's a great idea.
It's a good idea. I think we talked about it once, but no, I don't think we've really.
Maybe the Halajian fountain pen?
Yeah,
type of thing.
I like that. Architect design fountain pens. That's a good idea.
Should work. Yeah.
I like that idea. I'm going to buy one if you create one.
So actually, that's kind of an interesting subject. I think if you go back a few decades, I think there was a time when architects were looked at as people who were trained to design anything. So good examples, Frank Lloyd Wright. Wright could design the building. Yes. He could design the linens. He could design the flatware. He could design the carpet. He did everything. He designed the furniture. And, that over time has gone away. This notion that the way you're educated as an architect to think about design, we're limited to just buildings now, where it used to be an architect could design anything. Including a fountain pen.
Wow. I didn't even know that myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That was wonderful. Yeah, I didn't understand that. That's great. So telling a young person about who's thinking about getting into architecture, and I'd like to incorporate your thoughts about what advice would you give them from Mark's view to Paul's view? What would you tell them about architecture in today's age, 2026?
I would probably tell them, first of all, it's probably not something you're going to dip your toes in. If you're going to do it, you have to jump in fully, and you have to kind of dedicate yourself to architecture. You're never going to get the benefit of learning how to design and how to become an architect. And I think I'd also say, learn to maybe identify or look at analyze buildings around your community and figure out what you like about the building and why. In architecture, I know we were talking about how AI isn't capable of creating anything new, but architects, because AI, is looking through just massive amounts of data, but architects, all through our college, we'd be doing precedent studies. So we'd be looking at buildings and looking at maybe details or, specific elements of the building that we like, and then asking ourselves, how do we design something like this, or how do we improve on this design specific to the, constraints and constraints of, our project ourselves, how will we make this our own unique thing?
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And Paul, what would you give a young person going into architecture?
I think it would I would start with, why does architecture matter? Does it matter? And I guess I've come to the conclusion that, architecture does matter. It kind of defines who we are as people, as communities. It's the one kind of, as I said before, it's like the lasting artifact or representation of what we think, what we believe, what we want to invest in. And if you can kind of read a city by what they build. People go to Paris for a reason. It's the food, it's the history, but it's the buildings too.
The buildings.
So much of what defines us as human beings is buildings. So what I would tell a young person is, do you want to be part of shaping the world? Right? And if you want to be part of shaping the world, what we call the built environment, then it's the best outlet to express yourself. I hear this all the time from people. I'll run into people who will say, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect, but I just whatever. And then the conversation fizzles. And I always why didn't you do it? What derailed you? And it's always some lame thing like, well, I wasn't good at math, or I couldn't draw a straight line, or dumb things like that. And what's so great about architecture is those are all kind of myths, right? If you're creative, if you like communicating with people, if you like working collaboratively, if you like working in teams, if you like building things, if you like making things that last, this is the place for you. But I will support what Mark said. You got to throw yourself in. You can't dabble in it. It's the kind of thing that, sometimes it's not as rewarding as other professions. Sometimes it's more aggravating than other professions. But if you love creating, then it's a great profession.
Paul, you've worked on a lot of structures in Fresno. What faithful structures have you worked on? Like, what have you built, churches, or what? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Yes, I mentioned that I'd written my master's thesis on church architecture. So I've designed quite a few over the years. I did a church in Oakland, right on Lake Merritt, if you know downtown Oakland. So I worked on a Methodist church right after graduate school. And then when I moved back to Fresno, I've done a few here in Fresno. I worked on essentially an addition to St. Columba, which I think is now St. Michael's. It's an Episcopal.
St. Michael's, yeah. I just saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so right across from Fig Garden Village, we did that a few years ago. That was rewarding about that is we got to work with Corky Normart. I don't know if you know who Corky Normart is. He was a Clovis artist. He just passed away recently, but an amazing
Armenian,
artist.
Wasn't he?
Armenian guy, yeah, he was Armenian. He was actually commissioned to adorn the dome of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And if you ever get a chance to look at that, it's amazing. But
gosh,
he's a painter, and he was also a stained glass artist. So that big stained glass window that faces Palm, Corky designed that, and there's another. There's, I think, two other large pieces in the chapel over there. So if you ever get a chance to go look at Corky's work, it's just breathtaking.
I will absolutely do that.
After that, let's see other ones. We've worked on a Mennonite church, a college community church, which is really quite nice. Turned out nice. And then at the moment, we're working on a new worship center for the church I attend, Trinity Community Church of Clovis. So in, I think, 2016, we designed a discipleship center for our congregation. And then at the time, they thought, we'll never get much bigger than this. And they had no plans of designing a large worship center, but the church has grown. And we're now at the point where the elders of the church decided we do need a worship center to seat about 1,000. So we've been working on that, I think, since 2021. And we're now about 60% through construction. And for me personally, that's just been so rewarding to design a church for my own church family where I will worship every Sunday. And it's been just thrilling to be part of that. And
Absolutely.
Actually, at the moment, Mark and I we're kind of doing the fun part. We're designing the pulpit, the communion table, the pulpit and the communion table. And we've had a really good collaboration on that, and it's been great. And there's a guy in the church who's a really good cabinet maker who is going to actually build it. So it's been kind of fun to do this. Really, it's basically furniture design, and it's been really fun to do that with Mark.
So, Mark, what's your take on the pulpit? Like, did you have a little edge to it?
So for one of them, yes, but so we were actually designing two pulpits, one that's for their main Sunday services, and then one for their midweek Bible studies and whatnot. What we found was, our first idea was very sleek, kind of a little more contemporary than a normal pulpit. And we figured that, it might not be the time to use that one for our Sunday services, but they liked the look of it. They liked the aesthetics. So they suggested, or they requested, that we keep that one. We keep working on that one for their midweek pulpit, while the one for Sunday is a little more traditional, that kind of square shape or rectangular shape that we're all used to. But that one was interesting. It was pulling off of kind of elements from within the sanctuary, so that it looks kind of as if it belongs there, which is much more kind of in keeping with what we're looking for. So that Sunday pulpit.
The process has been really interesting. Where I would draw by hand, and Mark would take what I had and refine it and model it using the 3D. And then he would send it to our 3D printer. And what we presented to the pastoral staff was 6 or 7 different prototype 3D printed models. And, oftentimes we work with people who say, oh, I understand that drawing, when they really don't. People can't visualize. So showing them a model was so helpful in communicating the design ideas, and his ability to just very quickly run off these 3D prints was really a great process.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Excellent. My question is, what building in Fresno do you like? So let's narrow it down. Downtown Fresno.
Okay.
Each of you give me a building that you think, wow, that was a great structure.
You want me to go first, or you want to go? All right. The best building, in my opinion, in downtown Fresno, maybe in all of Fresno, is our federal courthouse. Okay. The Robert Coyle Federal Courthouse is a fantastic building.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Mark, what's yours?
I might say City Hall. I like the new City Hall.
City Hall. Okay. Very nice. Very good.
Comment on that. That was going to be my number 2. What I love about that building is everyone you talk to has an opinion about it. And that's what makes it great, is it challenges people to look at it and form an opinion. And I would argue that's a mark of a great building, is something that confronts you and makes you decide, do I like it or not? People either love that building or they hate it. No one is ever like, it's okay. That building, right. It forces you to make an opinion.
So now what about the old Security Bank building? What do you think about that one?
It's fantastic. It's great. I think
that's old architecture, right?
Yeah, but I think those kinds of monumental buildings that were good examples of the styles. We've moved away from the styles in architecture, the traditional styles, but it's a fantastic example of a, post, what was it? 20, that was built in the 20s. It's a great example of Italianate architecture from the 20s. Early high-rise architecture in America. That's a great example.
So that's good that we have something like that in Fresno, I think, because I have come to appreciate the architecture and the buildings, and this conversation we've had, it's like it's opened my eyes to architecture and seen it in a different way. And what I'd like to end with is tell me how Christ has guided you through this. Some people have the calling to do this and have the calling to do preach, or a calling or a gift. And I've been studying a lot about, God has created us all uniquely with gifts. And I just want to get your take on, God has given you this gift, and how has that influenced you? How has that helped you progress in your art?
For me, again, I accept the fact that I love what I do as a gift from God. I've never taken that as of my own doing. I think whatever talent I have, if I have any talent at all, it's from God. And I don't say that to appear to be humble. I really believe that. But I think the greatest way God has manifested his love for me is not so much in the practice of architecture, it's the business of architecture. I launched this firm in 2010, and starting a business is terrifying. It really is terrifying when you have a family and you're saying, I'm going to say goodbye to a steady paycheck and I'm going to see if I can do it on my own. And watching and the big question I had to that whole startup period was, does God really care about this? Does he really care about me? I know I'm saved, but does he really care about what happens every day? Painful things. And that was my big question for like the 3 formative startup years. Does God really care about me? Or I have to just be satisfied knowing that I will be with him in eternity and it's going to be brutal every day. And I
can totally identify with that.
I came to the conclusion he cares about all of it. He cares about all of it. And sometimes it's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be painful. but I would not trade the pain, the lessons you learn by knowing that he's faithfully walking with you every day. It's just kind of completed my whole understanding of God that, yeah, I am saved in eternity, but he cares about everything every day.
Every day. And Mark, what about you? How has God guided you into this?
Yeah, well, I think going back to my college orientation, when I had realized that there was really nothing else that spoke to me, I think that was the Lord kind of pushing me into architecture, and from there, life has I feel as though I've been rewarded by Christ by continuing through this architecture process. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of school in high school, so like the thought of going and getting a master's degree after my bachelor's degree would have sounded absurd to high school Mark, and then here I am. I went and got two, and it seems like the more I dive into this and the more I'm starting to walk this path, the more that I believe that this has been the right path, and that if I continue to walk down this path, the Lord will show me the right way to live my life, and will continue to bless me as I use my work to honor and worship Him.
But I think another unique thing about Mark is there aren't many architects who are accomplished athletes, and I think
yes, he's accomplished
that other side of I think you learned a lot about your faith, about who God is, about Christ on the wrestling mat or on the football field, and so I saw that in him as he was growing.
Yes. And again, it's all coming back to me, all the accomplishments in the athlete world that you did, Mark. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank the two of you. This has been such an enlightening experience and talk. And I thank you for being on my podcast. I look forward to the Halajian fountain pens. That will be, on Amazon one day. And just respect you guys and love you guys very much. God bless you. Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for asking us.
This is Scott Asmar, and I know that a lot of people look at everything and see nothing, and I want all of you to see everything.